Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. My name is Kong Shang, and I am the host of this podcast. The goal of this show is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge and inspire you to act, get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Today's episode guest is Rob Dube. Rob is the co-founder, owner, and board chair of imageOne. imageOne has been recognized as a top 25 small businesses in America on the list of Forbes Small Giants, which is an Inc. magazine best places to work. Rob is the visionary and CEO of the 10 Disciplines for Managing and Maximizing Your Energy, a video-based journey that teaches people 10 fast, simple, powerful, and fully customizable disciplines to manage and maximize your energy to achieve an optimal life. In addition, he's also the author and best-selling book of Do Nothing, which is the most rewarding leadership challenge that you'll ever take in your entrepreneurial journey. Rob, let's check in. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Kong? Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate you taking time out to have me on your show.
Thank you. And likewise, when I connected with our mutual connection, Gino, he was like, "Yeah, you got to talk to Rob. Like, he is the man for this." And of course, I wanted to, gather just your perspective on your entrepreneurial journey. Before we dive a little deeper into your experiences, how did you get into this work?
Well, how did I get into the work I'm doing now with the 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy?
That and also your the entrepreneurial
No,
lifestyle.
entrepreneurial world. Okay, let me start there. So when I was in high school, my best friend and I started selling blow pop lollipops out of our locker. We'd buy them for a nickel, resell them for a quarter. And that's when the entrepreneurial bug definitely hit the two of us. We had all kinds of entrepreneurial businesses all through high school and college. When we graduated college, we started a business called imageOne, and we ran that for 30 years until we put a succession plan in place where we have somebody who's our CEO now. So the two of us remain the shareholders, and we have somebody who runs it. We had the good fortune to actually sell the business in 2004 to a public company, and through dumb luck, we were able to buy it back 18 months later in 2006. And that's where we put a huge focus on our culture and really taking it to a whole nother level, very much purposeful and people first, pragmatic. And of course, profit is an important part of any business. And so, we started incorporating 1,001 little things, that added up to a lot over a period of time. And there was some nice recognition that we've received. You mentioned a couple of those things. And so I learned a lot about running a business, growing a business, starting it from scratch. I learned a lot about entrepreneurs over those many years because I'd hang out with them and we'd share stories. I was in peer groups. I still am in some. And so that's how I kind of moved into the work that I'm doing today with my business partner, Gino Wickman, as you mentioned. We have two ventures. One is the 10 Disciplines for Managing and Maximizing Your Energy, where we help entrepreneurs who have mastered their outer world work on mastering their inner world.
Mm-hmm.
And then we help startup to small business entrepreneurs through eLeap Academy, our eLeap Academy. And that's where we kind of teach them some of the very important foundational tools that are needed to make sure your business is in the right position to grow and scale. And so hopefully that's a good sense of what's going on, how I got here.
Yeah, that's incredible. And thank you for sharing your journey. Of course, back 20, 30 years ago, entrepreneurship wasn't a hot trend. Now it's like everyone's leaving their corporate jobs and wanting to start their own business because, of course,
Right.
technology has evolved. What's your take on the mindsets that have shifted from an entrepreneur back in the 1990s to today?
Yeah. The mindset. Well, I mean, I think people are more willing to take risks because they've seen, through the media and some of the famous entrepreneurs who are like movie stars today,
Right.
they've seen their great success. And so I'm sure if you and I took a minute and wrote down 5 people's names that are the most well known, we'd have at least 3 of the same names. So, these entrepreneurs who have had great success are literally like what movie stars were 30 years ago. So I think people are willing to, as I mentioned before, take more risk. It's concerning because entrepreneurship is a very challenging journey in so many ways, and there's so much that has to come together. It's one of the things we do with our eLeap Academy. Believe it or not, we actually try to discourage people from moving forward because, as I'm sure many you or many of your listeners know, a vast majority of businesses that start actually fail. And that's because we get so excited about our idea and we don't know how to run a business. We don't know how to execute on it. We don't know if the market really wants it. And we just believe we think it's great. And so we jump in. And that's why so many fail. So that said, I love entrepreneurship. And I think it's the greatest thing that this world has, because what entrepreneurship does is it does allow somebody to take their creativity and turn it hopefully into something useful for the world. It could be a product or a service. And at the same time, help people within an organization as it's growing have be able to make a living and drive the economies of the world. And if you are conscious about what you're doing, we call it conscious visionaries. If you're conscious about what you're doing, you can provide your employees with a really unique experience. So it's not just about them getting a paycheck, but it's about them having a really unique and wonderful life and having a paycheck. Mm-hmm. And as entrepreneurs, we can decide if we want to create that kind of culture. I believe that's a great kind of culture to create, but other entrepreneurs don't. They're just maybe out for the payday. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's part of it too. You risk a lot, you're making a big gamble and you could lose your life savings. Mm-hmm. So you deserve every dollar above that you get, through the risk that you're taking, because it is a huge risk. So I don't remember what your question was, but somewhere along the line, I hope I answered it.
No, I mean, what's the answer or not? That was a beautiful response.
Okay,
I
good.
actually forgot about
Good.
my question because I was so involved in your response. There's so much
Cool.
value that came out of what you just said. And I want to dive a little deeper into the notion of whether employees should have a side hustle or not as they're working for corporate America. What's your take on that? I think you kind of
that's a good question.
Gave like a little hint there, but do you recommend corporate leaders, business executives, to encourage their employees to take on meaningful work outside of their actual work or not? What's your
what does meaningful mean to you?
Gee, that's a great question. I should be asking you. I'm the host.
Okay, sure.
But that's fair. I mean, of course, this conversation should be engaging. So I think for me, meaningful work is work that uplifts people's spirits, souls, that inspires them to be better human beings. Like, for example, this podcasting, like my company, encourages me to continue providing thought leadership content through this podcast, because that's a wonderful way to educate people on the topic of purpose and meaning in entrepreneurship and leadership, right? It ties into
yeah.
So I guess in short, meaningful work that involves lifting people into better versions of themselves?
Yeah, that's an easy answer for me. 110% yes. Anytime we can lift others up in the world, be purposeful, I, I don't know how anyone could say no to that. That's fantastic. And I give you a lot of credit for doing it, because it comes from the heart, and, it's genuine care that you're providing to people. And so I'm all for that. I'm all for it. Yeah, 100%.
That's wonderful. I'm in alignment with you as well too, because obviously we've had, I mean, for me at least, I've had a number of positions I've been in the past where I just didn't really fully enjoy my work. I knew there was something more for me. And so
Yeah,
by tapping into another space, such as a side hustle or just like a hobby or an
right.
interest, really engages me to be more, um, I find myself as a greater value to my company when I'm able to
Yeah.
tap into other areas of work or hobbies or interests outside of my day-to-day job. And
And
so,
you are. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say one of the things that I've seen some companies start doing is offering, for example, yoga classes during lunchtime, where employees can, take a class and just kind of move their body and just be more in tune with their with themselves, and it gets the blood flowing, it has a body mind connection, and all of that is very beneficial because at the end of the day it's all about maximizing employees productivity, right? And so it looks like you have some
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you're saying is wonderful. One of the things like what you're doing with the podcast, you called a side thing, or, whatever, but it's a really a gift that I think we could give to each other, in the sense that as an employer, if you can allow your employees the freedom to spread their wings and be creative and let their creativity spark, they can make true impact in this world in many ways. And the employee benefits from that because they feel fulfillment,
Mhm,
and the employer benefits from that because they have people who feel fulfillment. And then when you bring it all together, there's an interconnectedness about it, in that we're just all humans having a human experience together. So it isn't about the employer, having these you're here as an employee to make us money. you know we all have jobs to do, and we have to do those well and efficiently and be accountable and all the things that go along with that, including the people running the company.
mhm,
And so we're only as good as our weakest link. And
mhm,
so when we can all be lifting people up and we're doing this together, maybe in our own creative ways, it's very powerful.
mhm,
And then as far as companies providing resources for people to be more mindful, to do things like yoga, to
mhm,
spend time during their day and, as you say, move their bodies if they're sitting at desks all day or whatever's going on.
mhm,
Um, I think that's, again, part of the human experience. The question I would have is, why wouldn't we do that?
mhm,
I would love if it was just baked into every culture like it was expected. When
mhm,
I say culture, the company culture is like, yeah, all companies do, like a lot of companies have meetings.
mhm.
Well, you
Right.
just expect meetings. How about just expecting time for body movement? It doesn't have to be yoga either. I mean, there's all kinds of body movements that you can do that are really mindful and get your blood flow going, and a little bit of your endorphins going, and so things of that nature.
Mhm,
I feel that's when the employee employer relationship can really come together in a holistic way.
mhm,
And to me, it's just the way it should be.
mhm,
Um, Another thought that comes to my mind in terms of the employee employer relationship at the company that I founded, imageOne, we created a policy a number of years ago, which we call mindful transitions.
mhm,
And what we realized was that when people either want to leave the company for various reasons, or if they need to be asked to leave the company, i.e., be fired
mhm,
because they're not doing their job, or get it, want it, or have the capacity to do it. They're not in alignment with the values, things of that nature.
Mhm.
It became an inhuman experience.
Mhm.
So a typical experience with an employee would be dissatisfied. They would go look for a job, they'd find a job, then they would come in and give their 2 weeks notice.
Mhm.
And the supervisor or the manager, whatever, would be kind of thrown off. Like, what happened? I had no idea.
Mhm.
Conversely, if somebody was not performing their job, and if they were being ethical, if they're stealing or something, that's another story. But if they're not meeting the standards of what their job requires, and they've been given fair chance to meet those standards, a manager calls them in and says, "I'm sorry, we need to terminate you. Here's the box. Take your stuff and leave." In the old days when people were in their offices, but you get
Right.
it, just the visual.
Yeah.
And that just, the whole thing felt so inhumane to us. Didn't
Mhm.
make sense to me.
Well, I mean, you
Like,
would have to pack up your boxes,
yeah,
and people will watch you, and then you would, I've
yeah,
seen it like over and over again, like early in my career, and people would just walk with their boxes, and like that person would have to go through, the walk of shame just to,
yeah.
get through that hall and out. And that was just so humiliating.
And you can't say bye to your friend. You work with people. You're friends with them. They're
Mhm.
they're friends with you. If you're not doing your job as well, that they're not so concerned with that. They just like you. You go have a beer with them after work or whatever you do.
Mhm.
And you're right. It's inhumane. So what we did is we created a policy, and it took a lot of education over a number of years. And that's where we say, don't there's no 2 week notice, and there's no you're terminated, you're gone, unless there's an ethical issue. What we do is we come together as early as possible, and we state the problem, and we talk about how we can get through it together. So in other words, if you aren't working out at imageOne, the company that I founded, we call you and say, okay, look, we've gone through this, we've given fair consideration to it's not working out. We've determined that you might not agree, and that's cool, no problem. We can agree to disagree on that. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a mindful transition with you. So we're going to help you get back out in the marketplace and find a happier place, a place where you can really thrive. That might take 3 months, it might take 6 months, it might take 12 months. I don't know. And we'll set a time frame together, and we'll work on it together. We try to open up doors. We try to help coach them on different ways of getting out there in the marketplace and marketing themselves, and finding them the right kind of place, really, really spending time coaching on it with them. Conversely, if somebody has reached their ceiling and they feel like they have more to grow, and we can't, there's nothing, there's nowhere for them to go in our organization to grow, or maybe they're just not happy anymore, whatever the case might be, same thing. Come in, say, it's not working for me anymore. I'd like to do a mindful transition. I'd like to look for a job. Give me some time to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And so again, we just create a runway, 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and we kind of reset at each one of those points. Where are we at? How are you doing? Are you getting out there, marketing yourself, or doing all the right things to make something happen? Assuming they are, then we're on board. We'll keep it going. That way, no one's thrown out on the street. No, the team still has somebody who's performing some work while we look to replace them. And by
Mhm.
the way, when we do replace them, if they haven't found a job, they stay with us
Mhm.
until they find a place to go to. So it just feels like more humane to me. It's not about you provide service for currency, and once we don't want your services anymore, goodbye. You're dead to
Right.
me.
Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't feel
Well,
humane to me.
right. And on top of all of what you just said too, I mean, just look at the impact that it has on the company's reputation. Now the employees can badmouth the company to their friends and family, and maybe now with social media so easily accessible, they could just put a post on Facebook
That's
about how
right.
horrible this employer was to them. And so that could have a negative impact on company's reputation and even the
Yeah.
leader, him or
Yeah.
herself.
That's right.
So it's a win-win situation when we treat employees right from the start all the way
Yeah.
to when they leave the company. Um, because there's just so much more pros and cons that I think
Yeah,
when we're ensuring that we're looking at the employee as a whole. You mentioned
that's
earlier,
right.
treating people right by viewing them holistically, the term you use, holistic.
That's right.
And one of the things that I appreciate about the industry that I'm in human resources, is that, and I coach business executives and entrepreneurs through this, is, you have to look at your employees as a life cycle from, you know, recruiting them, hiring them, training them, developing them, and retaining them. The worst thing that an employer could experience is having their top performer or performers leave the company and work for their competitor. Because what that does is that employee will share insight knowledge about their former employer and be that direct competitor, which could potentially get that business out of business. And so, of course, there's more to be said than just how you treat your people. You have to build a culture that's sustainable, where people can feel that they belong in an organization, where they can show up fully and authentically. A lot of us are, um, looking for those components. I mean, you look at the Great Resignation. Why do people leave? Well, some of the priority and some of the top reasons is, bad management, uh, toxic workplaces, and people just don't feel like they belong in an organization. They don't have a sense of belonging, a sense of
That's right.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
Speaking of fulfillment, what's your definition of fulfillment?
Mm. Well, mm. Well, for starters, I would say it's different for each person. So I guess I don't know that my definition necessarily matters. That said, my sense of fulfillment is a sort of a bit of non-striving. So when I think about fulfillment, and the reason I pause there for a moment is because there's a sense to me just in that word that I need to get somewhere to be fulfilled. But if we can find fulfillment, to use that word, in each moment, no matter our circumstances, that brings a sense of ease. So if we could keep ourselves focused in what's happening at this moment, right here, right now. So let's say you and I are doing this podcast together. I don't know you well. I had a chat with you the other day. You seem like a great guy. And when we're done here, if I croak, you're my last guy. You're my last chat. I want to make
Hope
the
that's not
most
the
of it.
case.
Well, it's okay if it
You have a
was.
greater impact in the world, and we want to see you, forever.
It's
But
That's great. I appreciate you. But it's okay if it was, because I feel that when we could be in the present moment and appreciate exactly what's happening in this moment, that's pretty special. So I don't know if it answers the question about fulfillment, but maybe it's something philosophically people could think about a little bit.
yeah,
I get concerned, when people, I'll be fulfilled when my bank account is filled.
mhm,
I'll be fulfilled when I get my new car, when I have my big house, or,
mhm,
or find my soulmate, or, et cetera, et cetera. Those things have a sense of fulfillment,
mhm,
but they can also be fleeting. And they
mhm,
could come in and out. Like, you might really like your house, and then you might not think about it for a little bit, and all of a sudden you're really grateful for it for a little bit, et cetera. I'm trying to use a material thing.
mhm,
Same thing in a relationship. You're really grateful, in a strong relationship, and then you kind of take, maybe sometimes our humanness takes over, and we it's not that we don't appreciate it, but maybe we're not in gratitude for it every moment. And so that's where I say there's some fleetingness about it. It could come in and out and in and out. But when we practice appreciation for this moment, the present moment, no matter whether we're with our soulmates or it's surrounded by our materialism or just by ourselves, it's all so special. It's all so special.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's very powerful. I think there's so much that you just mentioned. The first thing is what I'm hearing from you is we have to be living in the present moment to enjoy this life, right?
Well, let
And
me
what we
clarify
have,
that.
right?
Let me clarify that. You might not enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay too,
Mm-hmm.
because we have enjoyment. We have things in our life that we have enjoyed. We have hardships.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of life,
Mm-hmm.
and we all know that. We
Mm-hmm.
like the stuff that gives us enjoyment because it feels better.
Right.
And so that's why we kind of hold on to it. And when we have things that are challenges, that's why it's so annoying, because
Mm-hmm.
we know what enjoyment feels like, and we want to go over to enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to push away these challenges or try to overcome them or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
instead of realizing it's just stuff that's happening to us.
Right.
And so when we can just appreciate whatever's happening to us and be with it, just be with it. There's nothing to do, nothing to solve. If you can find some quiet time, we recommend in our program to find at least 30 minutes a day to sit in silence. Just be still. You can sit in a chair or whatever you want to do and just be bored. Be
Mm-hmm.
with your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be challenging. That's a challenging exercise for many people to do. And I get it. Here's a great quote by Anne Lamott. She says, she's an author. She says, "My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try to never go there alone."
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people can relate to why, when you sit in silence by yourself, it can be so uncomfortable. It feels, in our society, it feels like you're not accomplishing something. You have a million things on your to-do list, and you're sitting there like, I could be doing this, I could be doing that, or I could be doing anything other than this seems better, but it's giving yourself the opportunity to settle. And when you give yourself the opportunity to settle, you feel you begin to feel a sense of ease. Again, no matter what's happening in your life, again, the challenges and the things that are enjoyable. It's kind of like a jar of sand. You probably know this one. If you have a jar of sand, has water in it, you shake it up and the sand's all swirling around. And that's like that's your mind. And it's also the energy of your body. And when you set it down for a little bit, it settles. And that's like your mind. And that's the energy in your body. You allow your body to settle. You allow your mind to settle. And it's different than sleep, because you're awake and aware. And that's a big difference. And so you're just with whatever's coming to your mind, and you allow it to be without judgment. And you're not trying to solve. You're not trying to succeed. You're trying to succeed and solve all day long. Give yourself a break for 30 minutes. It's okay. You could take a break. I give you permission.
Some people, I would say, some people are afraid of their thoughts. How do you
Exactly.
get
That's
them?
the bad neighborhood quote. Yeah.
How do you how do you
Yeah,
get them to overcome that, right? Like,
how you get to overcome that is well, first of all, a disclaimer. If you have major traumas that have happened to you in your life, seek professional support, please. Okay.
I agree.
Go to a therapist. In the multitudes of professionals that are out there these days, and it's so value. And I've been to therapy for over 15 years in my life when I was younger, starting in my 20s to overcome the trauma that I had as a child. And so please, it's very worthwhile. But if you've done some work, and and I've done a lot of work, and it's still hard to sit. I have a daily practice, and it's still hard to sit. And it's, sometimes I know when I sit, it's going to come flooding up. It's just gonna, you know, but here's a few things to think about. The first is those thoughts that you don't want to see when you're sitting in stillness, they're in you. They're in your mind, and your body has a reaction to them, all happening without you even realizing it. So your energy is blocking. Your energy is blocking. And it's important to let our thoughts arise. And the practice of it is, if we can go easy on ourselves and not be so, not strive so much, is just to allow them to be. So when those painful thoughts arise, you just think of them like clouds in the sky floating by, or like waves in the ocean going back and forth. They're just there. And then you might notice that you're trying to solve something, and that's natural. Or you might notice you're having like a huge argument with somebody in your mind, as if it's really happening in front of you at that moment, which it's not, because you're sitting on a chair or wherever you're sitting, just with your thoughts. But this is how vibrant our thought process is. And then if you can just practice, and there are many ways to do this, but I'll just share one that I'm aware of and that I utilize, which is coming and focusing on your breath, and just the in and out of your breath, and just focusing on that. And that grounds you. That grounds you. And it might only be for 2 seconds until your mind goes off again. But when you notice that happening again, you just come back to your breath and allow that to ground you. Just focus on the path of your breath. And again, you wander. And I mean, we're all wired the same way. So it happens to all of us, the same thing. And when you do this on a regular basis, when you're disciplined about it, you begin to understand kind of the process, and you understand what's going to happen and what you need to do. And so you release, in a sense. You release, you let it go. And this is an important process for us humans. We need to allow these things to go. And when you're done with your 30 minutes or however long, then you can go back and start solving, if that's how you feel. Go grab your notepad or your computer or whatever you need to do, or call somebody, whatever it is. And, you could get back into your regular, striving world, whatever, or when your ego's getting in the way, all the things. I could go down a million paths with this, but just give yourself that 30 minutes or however long to settle, and just settle. And if you listen to this, if you want to rewind it and kind of think it through, the process of sitting there and focusing on your breath and letting your thoughts be, you could practice that. And that's really a mindfulness meditation technique.
Yeah, that's all very beneficial. And I believe in the benefits of mindful meditation. There's a sense of, confidence and power that comes out of sitting with your thoughts, because you have a chance to reflect on your current state. And just, for me, it would be lived experiences I've been through and how I can improve on myself, right? But there's also another opportunity to really get connected with yourself. Um, I've worked with some of the world's top leadership development consultants because of my work at Korn Ferry. And, one of the major consultants says leadership is you're leading from the inside out. And in order to be an effective leader, you have to start from within, meaning you have to be comfortable sitting with your own thoughts. And there's this, famous quote by the great William Shakespeare. There's no such thing as good or bad thinking, or good or bad thoughts. Is thinking makes it so. And I love that, because your mind is such a unlimited tool. I mean, it could take you to whichever thought you want. And we have control over our thoughts. Our power reside within, how we direct it. But some people don't understand that. They think that you know, their thoughts are thoughts that came from their lived experiences, and that's just it. So there isn't an opportunity to to direct your thoughts elsewhere. Um,
Hmm.
what's your take on growth mindset and how that helps entrepreneurs succeed?
Well, if your growth mindset is around improving yourself, which I think is what you're asking me, I think that's what you're here for. So
Mhm.
I don't care what your widget is. I'm sure your widget's selling the world or is saving the world, and that's fantabulous. Please keep doing your widgets, but work on yourself, and it's a life's journey. Don't ever lose that thirst for trying to understand. It's such a gift. And because what I've learned from those around me, those that have had the good fortune to spend some time with, no matter their age, is that when they're continually having a growth mindset, they're continually tapping into new things that they could have never imagined. So I think you will. I'm sure you have, and your listeners have, heard people allude to this, and it's almost as if those that gain more and more wisdom begin to understand that they don't understand anything, and that's actually quite beautiful. you know those that seem to understand it all, I don't know. I don't know who's got it figured out. I haven't met anyone yet. What does it mean to have it figured out?
Right.
That in itself, we could do an hour or two just on that.
Oh my goodness, like I could think of so many ways that we can take that. I mean, for me, the best leaders that I've worked with and seen are those that have they're considered lifelong learners, right? They don't have things figured out. They look like they have things figured out, but they'll be the first to admit that they don't, because they're always on this continual journey of learning and acquiring and expanding themselves and
Yeah,
evolving themselves, right?
yeah,
I would be afraid to say that I'm the guy that has things figured out, because that is when, you know, internally, spiritually, I stop growing. And tying back to our earlier point about fulfillment, I think, in order to achieve fulfillment for me, I would have to continue growing, to continue challenging myself. There's always saying, it's not the destination that counts, it's the journey along the way. And it's so true. It is about, to your point earlier, you know, appreciating the present moment and being stilled with our mind and knowing that all this is part of the journey and there's beauty in it. And so it just gives me chills just thinking about it, just saying that out
okay.
loud. Because it really ties into the work I'm trying to get it out about purpose, which is that we have to continue evolving. We have to continue learning. We have to find ways to add value to not just things in our own lives, but also to people's lives. We have to make an impact in the world. That is the true existence. That's why we are here on this earth, is to make a difference in people's lives, so that we can achieve fulfillment, so that we can achieve a life of, of satisfaction and happiness and and whatever your heart desires.
Hmm.
I've engaged in conversations with many business owners who, by their definition, they think they've accomplished a level of success, but really, when it comes to fulfillment, it's a different conversation. So
Hmm.
then it gives them a different perspective, and now they're beginning to reassess themselves. Am I truly happy? Like, is this really what success is?
It's
And
great.
and at the end of the day, their answer is no, because what they've realized through the conversation is Well, I've worked so hard not to be still, to keep thriving, to achieve success and be on top of the mountain, only to realize as I look over, holy cow, I was actually climbing the wrong mountain. The one that I wanted to climb is on the other side. not to
That's right
not
on,
have to
man.
climb all the way down and start from square one. And so the purpose of the show is really to inspire people to live out their authentic selves and the best version of themselves, and really get them the mindset and in knowledge to engage in these conversations, so that it could be of value to them as they climb the right mountain,
Mhm.
the the one that they're not supposed to.
That's right. That's so beautiful. Well said.
Yeah. So, what's your definition of success?
Well, again, I'm going to leave you short on this one. I really don't know. I think that if I could show up and be um, a positive human being to anyone that I interact with each and every day,
Mhm,
um, that feels like a good day to me.
mhm,
The rest of it just doesn't matter. To your point about the mountain, it's like, especially here in America, which I love America. Don't get me wrong at all, please. I mean, I'm all about capitalists, okay,
mhm,
and capitalist society, and but what we've done is we've driven success, it's become an expectation in so many parts um, of our society. So that mountain you reference, it's like everybody in society is like, climb this one right here. This is the mountain you should be climbing, climb it. And everyone's like, oh, okay. I guess everyone's telling me to climb that mountain. So I guess I ought to climb that mountain. And it's like, there's so many people and so much noise. You can't even see what other mountains are out there
mhm,
because you're being, shepherded in a certain direction. And to your point, so many, spend decades or maybe lifetimes, and they finally get up there and they're like, what the heck's this all about?
mhm,
Oh my gosh, what are those over there? I'm curious about those. And to your point, now I got to go down, I got to get through all those people and somehow get over there. That's a lot of work. I might just stay up here and, have a somewhat, what and maybe not have that growth mindset, not move towards that growth mindset that you mentioned before.
mhm,
And so I think if in a business sense, I think if, and it's happening more, which is really nice to see, I think if business people could enter um, into this type of career with a conscious leadership or a conscious visionary mindset from the get-go, um, it'll be of service to the world.
mhm,
And it really truly, and I really believe I'm not being idealistic when I say this. If businesses were there serving all peoples, including employees,
mhm,
and serving them in a conscious way, we would have a much happier society. And you and I know there's many unhappy people in their jobs.
mhm,
Could be the person who services your internet or something, and they come and you just can feel their energy, like they're
mhm,
just getting a paycheck and they can't wait to get home, you
mhm,
know. Yet you spend so much time doing it. All stuff we already know. I mean, I don't need to go through
mhm,
all that, but I don't know if that's a life well lived, really. It
mhm,
doesn't need to be that way, but leadership can make it that way.
mhm,
And they can also choose to make it a different way. And what's nice is you know we learn a lot, often mostly by example. And the more companies we see like that, um, the more we'll be able to model it, the more new entrepreneurs, new leaders coming in, whether corporate or whatever, and they see the model and they say that's the way it ought to be done. That makes sense. When I was coming up, when I was young and I was in my 20s starting my business, and I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and it's auto. And back then it was employer versus employee, and it was very split, leaders versus white collar versus blue collar. And, there's shouting matches and arguments all the time. And where's the collaboration? How does somebody go home, after something like that and feel good about what they're doing, making cars, whatever they're doing? I think those cultures have changed, which is nice to see evolved. And so, yeah, I think as business leaders, we have a real opportunity if we work on being conscious about it.
Right. And again, it starts from the inside. You have to have done the internal work and be in a conscious state and be mindful and intentional about your the company you're trying to build and the culture and the people you're wanting to attract to your business. All of that's important.
That's right.
I know we're about that time. This conversation seems so short for me, but I want to just ask you just a few more questions before we end this episode. But the next question here is, what inspires you to do the work you're doing?
What inspires me? I think that when any of us are doing something that you might not put the word work to it, I think that says something. And so in my career, when I've noticed it's work, it's probably not that inspiring. When I notice it's just something I'm doing and I'm flowing, then that's probably something that's inspiring me.
Yeah. Yeah, because it sounds like it feels natural to you, and you don't feel like there's a pressure, there's some sort of challenge in doing the work because you enjoy it. It comes in natural. Right. Sounds like it.
It's just, you've experienced it, and I'm sure your listeners as well. Sometimes you're just doing something. It could be a sport.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard work. You got to practice this, that, the other, but it's fun. You're not even think about, you might go, wow, that was hard work, but it felt good.
Right.
So.
That's amazing. Would you say that ties into your purpose, or that is your purpose?
Well, purpose is interesting. I have a hard time with purpose in terms of the expectations that we've placed on, especially a younger generation now. Find your purpose. You have to find your purpose. Everyone's running around. I need to find my purpose. Where's my purpose? And I'm just like, I want to say, just like, take the pressure off. Allow life to unfold in front of you. Do the things that you think make sense in the present moment, and see how life unfolds. See what experiences that you find yourself in. Some of them you'll like very much, and others you won't. And you'll wake up in 2 years or 20 years, and you'll all of a sudden be doing purposeful work, but you never had to define it. You never had to say to yourself, my purpose is, and we all have the same purpose, by the way. It's every single human being is to treat each other with compassion. And it's a very simple thing to say, but it's hard for us to do as humans because our minds are so complex. But if you really broke it down, if we all did that, the world would be a different place. It'd just be more peaceful. It just would be, if every decision was made with compassion. So it's really not that hard, but it is pretty hard, actually.
Yeah. That's that was a lot to take in a good way, of course. I love that. Of course, one of the other things about this show is really just to get people to talk about the concept of purpose. They don't have things figured out. They don't need to have things figured out, but just to have these as daily conversations. It doesn't have to be all encompasses. It doesn't have to be all encompassing. It doesn't have to be grand. It's just these talks that they can have with their
Yeah.
friends and family, to get some meaningful conversations flowing through their lives. And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
that's really one of the inspiration of this show. Well, of course, Rob, we're about that time. Do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with my listeners? And also, if people choose to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, I don't know if I have any real wisdom to share with anybody as a closing thought, other than to just express my extreme gratitude to you for reaching out and connecting with me and inviting me on your podcast. Um, and it's meant the world to me to get to know you a bit and have a connection with you. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
And as far as getting a hold of me and any of the work, the10disciplines.com is probably the best place. And you can, you can connect in all the ways possible once you're there. Everybody's technically adept in those ways these days. So you'll figure it out from there.
Rob, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you, Con.
Appreciate your gratitude. And folks, if you enjoyed this episode and want to connect with Rob, please do so. You know where to find him. And please reference where you discovered him. Until then, folks, have a pleasant day and your weekend ahead. Thank you.